Welcome back to another edition of Stock Center, energized by Sunglow. We're here at the World Pork Expo, and we're real excited to sit down with Cody Hayes and John Fontenot. Cody and John are from Southwest Louisiana, have been very, very long-term customers of Sunglow. Today we actually want to talk about your environment at home. Obviously you guys have a very different environment from a lot of our feeders across the country, and there are several things that make that feeding opportunity unique. Maybe talk about when you're buying baby pigs and what type of baby pigs you like to buy to feed in that environment, Cody.
Well, first of all, our environment consists of most days are in the summertime or 90s with 80 to 90% humidity throughout the day. And then as we convert into winter, humidity rarely gets below 60% in our country. So therefore, when we're buying baby pigs, we buy baby pigs that tend to be on the easier fleshing side, that are bulk easier, so we can feed less feed and less fat at times, so they'll just respond better.
Yep. So John, I know that your daughter Yemi doesn't show anymore, but I know you have a sow herd and have lots of customers you help in Louisiana. So as they're getting those barrows home from you and those gilts, maybe just walk me through the process of what you're telling them to put them on and just the quantity of feed that they consume.
Right. You know, when we sell those baby pigs, they'll be on the Sunglow starter.
Yep.
And as we sell them, we may send home some Sunglow with them, and then we'll roll into the 18.
Yep.
You know, and we kind of get those guys lined up on feed, and, you know, we'll start with a pound of feed, cleaning the trough, add a little more, you know, where we don't try to roll them too fast.
Yep. So I think you brought up a good point. You talked about, a pound of feed and cleaning up the trough. How important is that those hogs are hitting the feeders hard and cleaning that up when they get home?
Oh yeah, you know, that's the main thing. You got to make sure they're eating, not leaving, making sure the health's great, you know, and just.
To add to what John says, in our country, when we get babies home, I buy pigs from John and obviously all parts different of the country. And as you get them from maybe the northern country and bring them to South Louisiana, you've got to maybe have them a week or two older, because the humidity sets them back so much, and it takes them an extra week or two to get going. And therefore, as we start them, getting them converted and just the 18G, make sure they clean it up. And personally, in our humidity, in our situation, in our environment, I guess I should say, we prefer hogs to probably never do over 2 pounds a day, because if you gotta eat 4 to 6 pounds a day, because the more you feed them, the humidity, they'll lay there and they'll quit you and they'll lay down. And the main thing you want to do is make sure that thing is eating all its feed every day, and it's not wanting to quit you. As intake, I guess where I enjoy the 18G regular fat content is we can feed maybe just a hair more of it at times and still get bulk and mass, but also they don't lay there and want to quit you in the humidity.
Yep. So I think you brought up a good point, Cody. You talked about feeding just our regular 18G. Is there a time when you need it, when you need that fat and get more chub and just more flesh on those pigs? What's your go-to?
Our go-to in the beginning, I would say, when we're 60 days out and we think one needs, it's too hard, needs to start having a little more fat content, is liquid fat. And the simple reason we feed liquid fat in our country is because the powdered fat knocks them off feed because of the humidity and the environment we live in. The liquid fat, we can get more fluff and more bulk and mass out of liquid fat and keep them on feed, where their calories are lower and it's not as hard on their bellies.
Yep, and I think too, I've been to your guys' place and then been to LSU, and there's a lot of gilts that you guys are feeding. It's a gilt and barrow show, but the biggest percentage of your show pigs are gilts. John, do you think that liquid fat is a better fat source for those gilts?
Oh yeah, because I think it's harder to bulk those gilts up than the barrows.
Absolutely.
Barrows will bulk up pretty quickly. So we may feed that liquid fat maybe longer than you would on the barrows.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So we talked a little about your feeding program and liquid fat. Cody, what's what are some other practices you use, like feeding times and stuff like that? I think that's important for people to understand.
Yes. You know, and we'll just say in the summertime, coming into summertime, we'll feed at 6:30 to 7 o'clock before heat gets over 80 degrees. We try to always feed when temperature outside is below 80 degrees. So therefore it's 6:30, and then later in the summer you'll have to be 8:30 at night just so they're comfortable. And then as the day goes on, we use lots of fans, misters for a certain time during the day on the fans, not directly on the pigs. The only problem with running a mister all day in our country is we're so humid, their pens never dry. Therefore, then you start fighting problems like swollen hocks and just soft feet. You got to make sure your pen stays dry. So misters, I'd say from 1 to 4 is usually when we run a mister. And exercising wise, in the summertime, we always exercise in the morning times just so we can get it done and we're not after dark, because we do have a bad insect problem in our country, and you got to make sure you feed them before the insects come out and get on them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know we talked a little bit about environment, we've talked about feeding practices. What about when you're 30 days from a show? What are some things that you might do differently because of the humidity or because of just the environment that you have?
I'd probably say one of the things that we do a little different at our house than a lot of people do is we'll go to game on 30 days out, and I find the game on doesn't affect their intake, and you can get the mass up high and the bulk and the fluffiness that you need with the liquid fat. The one thing in our country that you gotta watch is how wet you feed them, because if you get their feed too wet, there again, calorie intake too fast, humidity and heat knocks them off feed. If you feed wet, I would just feed it just an even wet. I wouldn't get it to like a milkshake. A lot of times we'll feed dry just so we can get a little more in them.
Yep. So that was a question I was going to ask. So is your general practice to go to slop and wet feed, Cody, or do you like to stay dry if you can?
I like to stay dry if I can. I find that we get a little more intake, and especially on the gilts, we can get the softness in the middle that we need, because we can maybe get a pound or two more of feed in them without them shutting down.
So obviously in your country, you guys are participating in the World Pork Expo. I know you have two show seasons in Louisiana. You have your show in Shreveport in the fall, and then you have LSU in the spring. So really it's challenging to feed two different sets of pigs. How's that different? Or how does your main season would be feeding, your summer borns for your spring show. How does that environment challenging to maneuver through?
Well, in the summertime, I would say the biggest challenge is insects. I mean, keeping them things cool and trying to keep the insects down. And we probably feed less fat in the summertime because obviously humidity is higher. Therefore, and we feed more dry through the summer and into the fall in Shreveport, where in the wintertime we can get away with a little more slop and a little more mass because it is wintertime, and obviously our humidity's less and it's cooler.
High humidity. I mean,
it's still, for the country, it's still high humidity, but we can probably get away with a little wetter feed. And back to just seasons, in the summertime, I was talking about maybe buying them things older. Age is real important because you can't push one in August and September in Louisiana. They will not do it. So therefore, you got to make sure you buy them a little bit older, where you can kind of slow roll them all the way until you get to October, where you can kind of gas on them.
And probably a month ago is when we really got hot. So it's pretty easy feeding through that March, April, May, and then we get hot as can be. So we got to, throughout the day, those kids will go out there and rinse those hogs, cool them off, just try to keep them comfortable, And then it's really warm, and like Cody said, that July, August.
So when it's that hot, it's obviously important that you're feeding them right, because them hogs have to eat every bit of that to get, to reach their full potential. So as you guys came to the World Pork Expo, I know you travel as a big group, which is awesome because that's family time. You get to travel with your friends and your kids and your customers. But coming from that area where very high humidity, you've been extremely hot, and coming here where honestly that's a big temperature change. How do you maneuver through that environmental change?
I would say, like, say we left to come here on Saturday afternoon, 5 o'clock. As soon as we got a little heat shower and temperature broke, we got on the road. But 3 days before we left here, we put a little electrolytes for sure in their feed just to try to keep them going. And we loaded to come, misters in the trailers. When we got here, we, of course, electrolytes, but we only fed them probably, right before we left, we fed them half of what they normally eat just because of the trailer ride. And when we got here, half, and you had to feed probably every 3 hours, you know, just to get them back going and get them back rolling when we got to the show.
It's no different than a human. If you go to Dairy Queen and have 2 blizzards and then you drive an environmental change, your belly's not going to feel good.
That's why we'll say we're going to leave at 5. We'll feed them bears at 3 o'clock. Kind of let them get settled, you know, where they're not full stomach on the trailer.
Well, Cody and John, I want to thank you guys a bunch for doing this interview. Again, very, very long-term customers of Sunglow and great friends of our business. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a Walton Webcasting production. Livestock like you've never seen before.